Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, Lord Loomer is really obsessed with what Muslim women wear. And she says something that's pretty cliche here, and it's not even statistically accurate. You can look this up yourself. The amount of women in America who have exploded while wearing a burqa or niqab is non-existent. And if you recall, when we had lockdowns, everyone had to wear a face mask. And many just tied a cloth, a bandana, what they called a gaiter. Some people, they just would pull their shirt up above their nose. But some had handmade masks made of cloth that were available on Etsy and whatnot. And if you were a Muslim woman who wears a hijab and then you put on a face mask that's handmade, it covers pretty much exactly what a niqab would, although I understand that some niqabs have more narrow eye spots and a burqa has the netting. The point is, though, is that it was mandated that you cover your face in order to go to your doctor's appointment, to go to the dentist even, and then you had to pull it down and then pull it back up. When I was giving birth in the hospital, I had to wear a face mask. Because when not my most recent baby, my one before that. So as I'm laboring, I literally have my face covered with a face mask. So I have a hijab on, and then I have a face mask. So it's basically like a niqab. So, although I know that Asim al-Hakim, the noble sheikh, he said that it's not exactly enough, but again, we're arguing centimeters at that point. The issue here is how she's using a trope about Muslims with explosivities and such to make it seem as though Muslim women are a threat to society. And she wants that clothing to be banned. So she's obsessed with attacking modesty. She hates modesty. Now, her face is really grotesque, and she's always trying to shift it and Botox it and facelift it and nose job it so that she can like her reflection in the mirror. And I think there's something inside of her where a woman who's beautiful covers for her husband and for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doesn't reveal her beauty, even though she has it, and there must be this sort of angry, jealous spirit inside of Laura Loomer that's like, well, if I would have a beautiful face, I'd show it to the world. And she has to consistently pay someone to alter her face. So maybe if she was more happy with her own face and had more shyness and bashfulness and piety, she wouldn't get so offended at better women keeping that for their husband and listening to their maker. If you look at art from different countries and time periods, you'll see that covering the hair and having layers of clothing is nothing to attack, nothing to degrade. It is actually a quiet resignation of one's sensuality. For quite some time, it was normal for women to cover their hair. It wasn't seen as extremism. It wasn't seen as fanaticism to not prance around in a bikini or skin-tight yoga pants or sports bra and volleyball pants. In fact, even when it was hot outside, women still had that value of covering up their body and having some classiness to them. Modern degeneracy, though, seems to froth at the mouth that a woman would dare not subject herself to being fat material and gooning material for the porn-brained male of Western civilization. Young girls covering their hair with bonnets or wearing layers of clothing, not showing their chests as such girls do in little disgusting toddlers in tiaras and child beauty pageants, and now little boys do drag themselves. We see that little girls were taught modesty from a young age of the classic kind, where the curves of your body were hidden and it was more focus on comfort, drapery, and a sort of, how would you phrase it? A sort of elegant grace. A gracefulness that only modesty can give. And when one covers their hair, they are putting aside that catchiness to them that brings on envy, that brings on too much admiration. Women who don't thirst trap and wear loose clothing and cover their hair are far more spiritual than those who reveal their beauty and use their sexuality, their allure, their Jezebelness to maintain power, to manipulate men, to put down other women. The list goes on. Those who hate modesty often have a very pernicious spirit. Why does Laura Loomer obsess with a woman covering from her nose to her chin, part of her cheek? Why does she want to fight against that? It tells you that she doesn't really have a good moral compass. We have an epidemic of women, right when they turn 18, opening up a porn account on on OnlyFans. Loomer doesn't really fight against that. She's obsessed with undressing Muslim women. Obsessed with it. One could argue that Laura Loomer would cook her husband if able. The way she fawns over Trump, how obsessive she is, how inappropriate she often speaks, and her vulgarity and combativeness and snarky attitude would be off-putting even to the most mild-tempered of men. She would be more of a burden to have in your life as a romantic partner than anyone that I know of. I'd argue Laura Loomer would be worse than Cardi B, because at least Cardi B tries to be fun. She's lewd, but she tries to be fun, whereas Laura Loomer, well, she's loud, spiteful, hateful, vindictive, malicious, combative, disharmonious, and just overall unpleasant. She hates the niqab and the burqa, not because she wants to free anybody, but because she wants women to not have the option of escaping the male gaze. She feels that another woman's modesty is an affront to her own. It is quite sad that a woman who's disfigured her face, who is the lapdog of the Trump regime, wants to make life harder for women to be modest. She knows that if more women wake up to true modesty and reject the sexual carousel that they are forced to participate in against their will, that this would hurt a lot of her tribe's power. Why does Laura Loomer want the CEOs of porn companies to be able to undress women? Laura Loomer fights for immodesty. She fights against piety. If a woman is offended by the clothing of pious women, that tells you that she's deeply insecure and she does not want to be faced with a better example. She is quite grotesque, a terrible human being, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the believers. Ameen.